This video is about filming with the Blackmagic Pocket 4K Cinema camera and the GH5, and whether those two can go like that, and just sort of general impressions about the Blackmagic camera. So I'm gonna start with the general impressions. First of all, if you are used to filming with a DSLR, okay, here, this is basically the Blackmagic camera. It's not, obviously, but this is the 5D Mark IV, which has got some other features that the Blackmagic camera doesn't have, and vice versa. But like, I kind of started really filming on these cameras. You know, had a fixed screen, no image stabilization, no EVF. The Blackmagic camera is really similar to that, where fixed screen, no EVF, no image stabilization, no in-body image stabilization. It does offer image stabilization via your lens, if your lens supports that, but in general, we're kind of going back to that. That's a trade-off, you know, because newer cameras like the GH5 have in-body image stabilization. That allows you to get shots in ways that you just can't get with you can get them, it just takes longer and more setup time. Like, so for instance, first thing I shot with the Blackmagic camera was like this place by a bridge, and I noticed there was a puddle that was reflecting the bridge in a really cool way. And so I literally just like stood over the puddle holding this camera. You can just do that, and I could flip out the LCD so I could look down and see what I was shooting, and it looked great. And of course, because of the in-body image stabilization, I got a really usable shot out of that. You just can't do that with the Blackmagic camera. I mean, you can. Sensor-wise and stabilization is just gonna be a different thing altogether. So that's the negative side of shooting with this camera. Positive sides are the image quality is just remarkable. The image quality is awesome. I think it has the most natural sort of texture out of any camera that I've been able to work with under $10,000. Highlight roll-off is really pleasing. The color science, Blackmagic's color science, I think it rivals Canon in a lot of ways for their stills, and it just holds up. It's one of those, when you see it, you're just like, wow, this just feels right. Like, the colors feel right, the image feels right. A lot of times when I was shooting with the GH5, I would have a hard time wrangling the color. Usually it'd shoot a bit green, and I'd have to add magenta. If you go back and look at the last video I posted called One Perfect Day, that was shot with a mix of both cameras, and in fact, if you can tell me which camera was which, pause this video, go watch that one, and come back, and then comment, let me know if you can pick them out. That would be pretty impressive. There was just a string of shots in sort of like the middle of that video that is the GH5, and then one sort of lone dog shot that was also GH5. And the reason I shot with both of them was because I just wanted to see if I could get the two cameras to play well together. When I went and shot by the bridge, I was able to actually put the camera on a tripod and then take the camera off. Same lens, same Metabones adapter, same white balance, all that stuff. And the purpose was really just to see if I could, to see if they played well. So I think they did. I think that the GH5 is a great camera, and it is a workhorse. Right now I have it in a cage with a little battery grip. I can put a follow focus or a remote follow focus, or traditional on here. Really steady. It's got the EVF. It shoots Vlog 60 frames in 4K, 10-bit color. There's a lot to like about this camera. I've shot a bunch of professional projects on it. I think it's a camera worth having if you're in the market for something like this. Also, when I was overseas, last time I brought this camera with me because it packed up so small, and I was able to throw it into my carry-on Pelican case along with a gimbal and some lenses, audio gear, and it has the audio interface that you can just grab interviews with really quickly, and it's quite nice. I think you can get some great filmic images from this camera, and that's the goal, right? And that has been the goal since the start. And in fact, if you could indulge me for a little bit, I want to take a little tour of history. So when I first started shooting, I looked around and I found a 24p camera that was made really popular by this guy who shot a short film called White Red Panic. And if you go back, you can actually watch that film now, and I still think it holds up. And that just goes to show you that it's not the camera, it is the operator. It was his lighting, it was his color grade, his composition, his storytelling, all those things added up to make that short what it is. So I ended up having that same camera anyway, and there was a forum called the HIV20 Forum and it was all about how we can get filmic images out of this mini DV camera. So that resulted in me shooting my first short, which is actually, if you scroll down, I think it's called Atlas Test Shoot. But that was a fixed lens camera, and in fact, to change the shutter speed and aperture, you had to shine a cell phone into the lens, lock the exposure, and then sort of trick the camera into being a fully manual camera, which is ridiculous now. Obviously, no one would do that. I ended up getting a 35mm adapter, so I could put stills lens on it and then pull focus, which back then was a huge deal. And then this Canon 7D came out, and I remember I bought that, I pre-ordered that as soon as it was announced. And I think the 5D Mark II came out before then, but for me it was the camera that I wanted was the 7D. That was my next camera, and I just remember being able to change the aperture and the shutter speed, like on the back of the camera body. Like I still remember doing this, and just seeing those numbers change without having to shine a flashlight into it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. And obviously that's changed the world for us filmmakers. The Blackmagic camera, though, I think is a similar leap forward. And the reason is just because, like, you couldn't get the images that you get out of this camera for less than $5,000 to $10,000, whatever. The point is that this camera is like a new paintbrush, you know, that allows us to get images with a more filmic texture. I just remember looking at the back of this camera when I was shooting and thinking, oh my gosh, like that is the image that I've been searching for this whole time, right there on the back of this $1,300 camera, which is crazy, and sort of poetically takes the same kind of battery as the Canon cameras did and do. Lasts about 3 seconds, but it takes the same kind of battery. I wanted to see how the camera would do handheld. Obviously, there is no in-body image stabilization. So what I did was I paired it with the Zacuto EVF, this guy, which you can get on eBay for like pretty cheap now. And because you have 2 points of contact with your body, it's exactly like shooting with a DSLR, you know? A little more shake maybe, noticeably because of the sensor size, but because I have the Metabones adapter that helps alleviate that. I think most people that shoot with this camera are gonna shoot with an adapter so they can use full frame lenses. So I shot with the Sigma 18-35, which is pretty wide, so that doesn't need as much stabilization as maybe a longer lens. And then I also shot with the longest lens that I had on me, which was the Canon 70-200, the version 2 of that lens. And I turned the image stabilization on, and with the EVF, all those shots are handheld. So I think they're all pretty usable, and I'm just really happy. So thank you, Blackmagic, for making the camera that I think we all wanted. I was able to put the Blackmagic camera on the Icon stabilizer. So this is the Icon EC1 stabilizer. I have this little thing that just has a screw inside of it, so that way I can hold it like this and not wear out my arm as fast. It can hold the Blackmagic camera with a lightweight lens on it at least. I bet I could probably get the Canon 24L on there as well. I haven't tried it yet. I will let you know. The menu system is so clean. It's so easy to use. It's like, I read the manual, but I almost didn't need to. So on the top, it has 3 function buttons, which I have set to focus peaking, zebra, and LUT on and off. And then there's a high frame rate button back here. And because I like to shoot at 48 frames for slow-mo instead of 60, a lot of lights flicker at 48 because we are in a 60 hertz country. So, you know, with the GH5, there's like a synchro scan option where you can dial in your shutter speed to be at the perfect angle. But with the Blackmagic camera, they made it so simple. One of my favorite features is that when you hit the shutter button, it has 2 options on the back of the LCD that gives you recommendations for a flicker-free shutter. Yeah, so much of filmmaking is being automated, it's crazy. The story is king, you know? These cameras are awesome. Just remembering what the goal is. The goal isn't the gear, the goal is the story.